Hello and welcome back to Mrs. B History. In this video we're focusing on question 1 from the Whitechapel Historic Environment paper, and I want you to watch this video all the way to the end because I'm going to show you exactly what the mark scheme and the examiner's report are looking for, walk you through the perfect answer structure, give you sentence starters you need, and show you 2 fully worked model answers. By the end of this video, question 1 should feel like a guaranteed 4 out of 4 every single time. So let's start with the basics. Question 1 on the Whitechapel paper asks you to describe 2 features. Today we're going to look at the question, describe 2 features of the work of H Division in the policing of Whitechapel. It's worth 4 marks. It tests assessment objective 1. That's your knowledge and understanding of the period, and most students should be aiming to spend no more than about 5 minutes on it. This isn't a complex extended writing question. It's a focused knowledge-based question, and the good news is that the structure is very predictable. One important thing to flag is this question is always set on the historic environment specification content. So anything covered in the Whitechapel topic could come up. It might be H Division, the Vigilante Committee, lodging houses. Please make sure you always read the question carefully and make sure your answer is specific to what is named. Before you write a single word, I want you to make sure that you get into the habit of decoding the question. So let's break it down word by word. Describe. This tells you that you do not need to explain, analyse or argue. You just need to give factual detail. No, this shows that, or this is significant because. You just need factual content. 2 features means that you must write about exactly 2, not one extended paragraph or not 3 separate points. 2 features clearly separated. And then the work of H Division. The focus here is on what the police actually did, their actions, their responsibilities, their tasks, not what the public thought of them, not what reforms had happened before. And finally, the policing of Whitechapel. You must stay specific to Whitechapel and to this time period. General statements about Victorian policing will not score. Specific content about H Division's work in Whitechapel will. So now let's look at exactly how the marks are awarded, because this is what tells us how to write the perfect answer. The examiner always awards marks as follows: 1 mark for identifying a valid feature and 1 mark for supporting detail that is directly linked to that feature. You do this twice, once for feature 1 and once for feature 2. That will get you 4 out of 4. The key word here is linked. The detail must connect back to the feature you've identified. If you identify one feature and then add a detail that's actually about something different, the second mark won't be awarded. Everything has to belong together, and critically, the mark scheme makes clear that your 2 features must use different information. If you effectively make the same point twice in slightly different words, you are capped at a maximum of 2 marks. So here is the structure that you should be using every single time. It's simple, reliable, and it's exactly what the examiner is trained to reward. Sentence 1 is your feature sentence. This will get you your first mark. State the feature clearly and specifically, using accurate vocabulary. Name what H Division did. Sentence 2 is your detail sentence. This gets you your second mark. Expand on that feature with a specific piece of supporting information that is directly linked to what you said in sentence 1. Then you repeat this process for feature 2 using completely different content, and you have your 4 marks, 2 features, 2 sentences each. Done. So here are some sentence starters to make this even easier. Maybe put these on a revision card because they will help you structure your answer quickly under exam pressure. For your features sentences, you could begin with: 1 feature of the work of H Division was, or H Division was responsible for, or a key feature of H Division's policing was, or H Division's officers were tasked with. For your detailed sentences, you could begin with: for example, they would, or this meant that officers, or in practice this involved, Or perhaps the most powerful one, this is shown by the fact that. And here is a tip worth remembering. Never begin feature 2 with exactly the same sentence opener as feature 1. It makes it harder for the examiner to distinguish between your two features, and it can make your answer look like one long point rather than two distinct ones. Now this slide is really important, and I'd encourage you to pause and take note. Every year, examiners write a report on how students performed, and for this question, they identified some very specific mistakes that cost students mark. I want you to know about them so you don't make the same mistakes. Mistake 1 was writing about general policing changes. A number of students mentioned Robert Peel's reforms or changes to policing since 1800. These won't score any marks because the question is specifically about H Division's work in Whitechapel between 1870 and 1900. Mistake 2 was the describing public opinion of the police. Students wrote about how unpopular the police were or how the police didn't trust them. This is not what the question is asking. It asks what H Division did and not what people thought. So please don't get this wrong and make the same mistake in other questions. Mistake 3 was writing only one sentence per feature. The examiners noticed that where students wrote just one sentence, it was often impossible to tell whether a link detail had been provided. Always write 2 sentences per feature. Mistake 4 was repeating the same point for feature 2. If you just reword the same content for your second feature, like I said earlier, you're capped at 2 out of 4. The features must be genuinely different. So let's look at a model answer for feature 1. I'm going to use beat policing as my example. So my feature sentence goes, one feature of the work of H Division was beat policing. That's 1 mark. My detailed sentence then says, for example, officers would patrol the streets of Whitechapel on foot, hoping that their visible presence would deter criminals and deal with everyday problems such as drunks, traffic incidents and accidents. This would be my 2nd mark. Now notice what makes this work. The feature is clearly identified in sentence 1. Sentence 2 is not a random fact about Whitechapel. It's directly linked to the feature I named. It tells us how beat policing worked and what police officers actually did during those patrols, meaning that it would get a full 2 marks. Now feature 2, I'm going to use detective work through CID, completely different from feature 1. So my feature sentence is, H Division was also responsible for detective work through its CID unit. This would get me 1 mark. My detailed sentence would say, this is shown by the fact that 15 detectives from CID were assigned to H Division and used investigative techniques to identify criminals, including Inspector Aberline's investigation into the Jack the Ripper murders. This would get me my 2nd mark. Again, let's look at why this works. The feature is clearly stated, the detail is linked directly to it. It tells us the scale of the CID unit, what techniques they used, and even named a specific example. Named examples like Inspector Aberline are not essential at this level, but they do reinforce your credibility as a student who really knows the content. So that would be 2 out of 2 for feature 2, and combined with the first feature, that gives me a top score of 4 marks. Now you might be wondering what else you could write about. Because the mark scheme says, and this is an important phrase, except other appropriate features and supporting information, that means you are not limited to beat policing and the CID. So some other features you could use are as follows. You could write about the H Division boundary, the fact that Whitechapel was an extremely high density, high crime area, and officers had to manage this with limited numbers. You could write about police in the lodging houses. The large numbers of common lodging houses in Whitechapel were associated with crime and disorder, and H Division officers were responsible for managing them. You could write about managing press attention and public panic, particularly during the Jack the Ripper investigation. H Division had to continue their daily policing work while also managing enormous public and media pressure. Or you could write about the use of plainclothes detectives, CID officers who operated out of uniform to gather intelligence in a way that uniformed beat constables could not. Any of these, structured with the two-sentence approach, would score full marks. So before we finish, let's run through your 6-point checklist before you move on from question 1 in the exam. Ask yourself these questions. Have I described two separate features? Does each feature focus on what H Division actually did? Have I written two sentences per feature with a feature and a detail? Is my detail linked directly to my feature and not a random fact? Are my two features different from each other? And have I avoided writing about public opinion or general police history? If you can tick all 6 of these, you have got your 4 marks in the bag and question 1 is done. Please, if you've liked this video and it's been helpful, like and subscribe for more Mrs. B History exam technique videos. I've got videos covering other questions on the crime and punishment paper and more coming up, so please make sure you check these out. Good luck with your revision and I'll see you in the next one.